Okay, hi there, guys. Hope you can hear me through loud and clear. Yeah, just on put the hand up. Let me know if I'm coming through okay, and we'll get stuck into it. Gonna get my notes for where I am. Alrighty. Mel, hey mate. All right, let's get going then. Welcome to Trade Setup in the live stream. It's the start of September, so the 3rd of September. It's been a great weekend. Been quite relaxed. I hope everyone else was the same. Had an enjoyable weekend. Just spent some time relaxing and unwinding. I know I did. It was good. Father's Day as well, so that was good fun. Getting spoilt yesterday. Hope all you fathers out there did as well. And yeah, so that was me. So back into it today. Market's fairly flat actually. The last I saw of it, I think it's edging its way lower. US, not much to happen on the US front. It was a bit of a mixed bag. So we'll have a bit of a chat about that. Murray, how are you, mate? They're a bit of a mixed bag in the US. There's still, obviously, I think there's 200 billion worth of tariffs on China, which are due, which are coming due. I think it's any time soon. So that's keeping the market spooked a bit. But at the same token, no one's willing to sell off because they've been caught in the past, edging into the market short or selling positions, and then it turns around and spikes back up again. So it's more like no one wants to put on any risk, but they're all happy just to, well, not sell out as well, just hold, some sort of risk to the market because I think the US economy is still ticking away nicely. And I'll get rid of this screen actually. I'll just sort of refresh, get rid of that. So yeah, it wasn't a big night in the US. I think what do we had? The Dow was down slightly. The S&P was, pretty much break even. The Nasdaq was up. So, it was the same old story. The Nasdaq ticking along nicely. Europe, yeah, Europe led the way lower. They were down because of we still got the tariff issues and trade issues. Obviously, what with China. Then Canada, I think a meeting. There was no negotiations, or it didn't come to anything with Canada. I think that was on Friday, and that's towards the end of the session. It come out and the market sort of, I think it was selling off during the session, then they come out and it did pop up into the close, which is a bit strange, a bit reverse, but they've got a holiday today. So whether people were looking towards the worst, I don't know, but basically that's cooling the market. So it's just that same old story. Everyone's waiting to see firstly what's happened with Europe and tariffs to take the headwind away out of the market. Then you've got China, what's going to happen there, and then obviously you've got Europe as well. There's still a few trade issues with Trump's taken on everyone basically. I give him credit for that. He's aggressive in that respect. So yeah, that's pretty much what's just keeping a lid on our markets. Today we're down 1 point. So let me just see where we did open up. Let's go to our. Where do I want to go? Oh, XJA. Let's just see where we opened up. So yeah, we didn't really open up at all. Let's just see intraday. I'm problems with my mouse now. Monday. So yeah, it didn't really push higher. So the SPY was actually up for this session, which is unusual. If you go and look at the intraday SPY chart as a bit of a barometer for what's going to happen or what could happen on the open, the SPY was actually roughly up from where it closed at 4 o'clock. So Friday afternoon when the ASX closed, or 4:10 past 4, the SPY rallied that night about 20 points. So it's a bit unusual, but that's happened before, and then we've opened down. So as you know, they do use the futures as a hedging mechanism for the ASX. Might have been a bit of buying up and then selling into the futures as the market opened down. They might do the same tonight. We don't know. But yeah, that's what I was looking at this morning was potentially a 20 points open on the ASX, but it didn't. We pretty much, just opened where we closed on Friday and then headed up. 31st, we closed at 63.19 and we opened about there and started ticking higher. So by about quarter past, we're only up as high as 63.29. So in about 10 or 15, and we've just drifted lower during the session. So nothing to write home about there. We don't probably need to look at the. G'day, Lauren. We won't really bother looking at the US now, just on the charts. I mean, they haven't really changed too much when we spoke on Thursday. No big changes there. Same pretty much with Europe as well. I mean, they've been bouncing around. They were down on Friday, but I think they were up for Thursday. What else we got here? And the US is closed tonight too, so I wouldn't be surprised if we sort of hover around break even, the 63.20 mark, unless of course we get a bit of selling into the close. Wouldn't expect that, being that the US is going to be on holidays tonight and there was nothing night on Friday night. They could be looking towards payrolls. I think payrolls will be out this Friday in the US. It's always the first Friday of the month, and that's this Friday, isn't it? So you've got US payrolls. They might be just being a holiday today, a shortened week as well. It might be a bit cooler coming into Friday, and then sometime during the week, we're going to get some news on what's happening with China's tariffs, whether the US are going to implement that or whether they're going to give it a bit more time or they're going to try to talk it out. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know if the delegation's still over there and they're having a bit of a chat to try and work it out, or going through the negotiations. I think obviously they're busy with Canada as well with NAFTA, so they've got their hands full, really, the US, on all fronts. Now we'll get into just what we've got. Let's take a look there. We've only got the three at the moment. We've got, unfortunately, stopped out at Oz Minerals, which was probably it was an aggressive trade. We'll look at that one now. And as it turned out, well, it didn't play out nicely. We got stopped just below that low. I didn't want to put too much risk on that, purely because being a gold play and all, and gold's still struggling. I mean, and you're trying to fight what's going on with the fundamentals and tariffs. And you never know what's going to happen there. They can change from day to day. So probably a bit too aggressive, and then we paid for it a bit. But on the flip side of that, we've got CDA, which is going along nicely, back at 320, and they just announced we've got the dividend on that as well. Did get the dividend on Oz as well, but all in all, it was down a few percent. This one's actually going nicely. TER, that's hovering around that 60 mark. Sorry, before we continue, just put if there's something you want to look at, just chuck it into chat too. We'll get into it now. I've got a few things I just want to quickly look at. And then we just get into some shares, even if it's a currency, if you want to put those in. TER, which is Terracom, they're doing nicely, still doing quite nice. Hovering around that 60 mark. So we're looking for a partial at 65. Didn't quite get there. It got to 63.5. So it's a bit of a shame that whether it's just going to kick up from here or it's going to hover around that 60, being that it is getting a bit overcooked both on the weekly and the daily. It's got a lot of room to move on the weekly. That's the chart that's probably the basis. It's looking good, but there might be a bit of heat just come out of that daily and a bit of a move back. So either way, if it doesn't kick up to 65, then we're going to have to take that partial around 58 at the moment. But I'm also debating at 60, whether just to lock some in at 60 and let the rest go. But we'll see how that goes. XRO is the other one. XRO is, look, that's just grinding up. It's still looking quite good. Apart from a bit of rejection, it did trade up to around 52, above 52 today. Just make sure we can get that. You can see that 52 today, and then, sorry, today got to 52.10 and then backed off. So it was up, a few percent, and turned around and backed off, and it was actually down. So it is getting a bit choppy, which would lead me to believe that maybe it's getting a bit extended up here. There might be some, obviously there's going to be some people start to edge out of some, especially with a stock like this. It's been going up quite strong, and then you've got still the headwinds with China, and that could cause, it's probably going to cause some issues if they don't go ahead with it. There's going to come a time where people are just going to be looking at taking profits. It might be now. You never know. And I guess the ones, the way I see anyway, the ones that are probably going the hardest coming into, if the market is going to tip over a bit, they're the ones going to move to south pretty quick. So everyone will be racing to lock in profits if the fear sets in. So we've got our stop on the second half pretty tight on that one. So look, either way, we're going to be profitable. So it kicks on from here. Give it some room, is the old theory. Right, so that's it on the three of us. Obviously, with that CDA, we have got a profit target on that too. I'm looking up towards a partial at 340. We may look to take it a bit earlier, or just keep an eye on this one. So if you've got that, just keep an eye on it. The weekly, like I said, that weekly is still, I mean, that's a weekly there. From 2016, it's just been trending higher. You've had a major corrective action through 2017, and this year, start of this year was pretty much the high low we can see in Feb. And we're holding higher lows as we go up. It just may be, we'll just have to see how this goes. If it can extend up to take us out at a partial, or whether it's just going to sort of grind sideways for a while. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. So that's us. All right, we've got Lauren. Good work, mate. We'll just going to go through. This is Talisman Mining. It is a smallie, and it's only traded about 40 grand at the moment. It's got a bit of liquidity there, not a hell of a lot, obviously, but it's for the not for the faint-hearted. It is just go to the weekly. It's the old what we like the most, as in we've had this big kick up, we've had that pretty much push all the way down on the weekly basis through 2017, 2018, where it retested that lows around that 20 mark, and it's just recently back in June, it just ticked higher. And it's potentially, we're looking for that. If that can hold a weekly higher low from here, and you can see longer term, it's a higher low as well at 20, and then that weekly higher low, that would lead me to believe it's going to take out this high at 33 and potentially pushing up to that 40 mark or above and starting a new leg up, or it could just get a bit of a run on like we saw here. If there's, especially if it's going to be news driven, it could really tick on hard. It's the actual weekly chart that's looking good and really looking down to that daily for a potential entry. And even you can see on the daily that was it cup and handle type of formation. You got the handle here, that cup forming, and that's starting to edge up. But it's something to keep an eye on. The stochastics on the weekly are okay, but the daily, it could be getting a bit stretched up here. So it might still be a bit choppy going forward, but something just to keep an eye on, even if you don't trade, just to see how it plays out. MGX was another one, which, just let me look at that weekly. It's more, you can see that weekly structure. That weekly structure is looking quite good. It's just obviously Mount Gibson Iron being being locked into what's happening with the tariffs at the moment, with pricing in the US dollar especially. It's obviously got some headwinds, and so I wouldn't expect that to get a kick on until that's all those issues are sorted out. It's just the weekly chart looks quite good. It's getting some support. If we're just drilling on that on the weekly chart, you can see that bit of a run up at the start of 2017, come off quite hard, and then from there it's been. You can see price was starting just pretty much contracting. It was being capped around that 40 to 50 mark, 47.5, being capped to these highs through here, but still holding higher lows, and it's just recently broken up through that 47 mark. So it'd be nice to get a bit of contraction in here, build another higher low, and just go down to your daily to see if there's an entry. But again, it's those headwinds that'll be it's more concerning for me, just to see if that's going to cap it too much. And that's looking at that daily. Let's just undo that. So we've got our eye on that one there. The weekly's getting a bit extended up here. So if you're looking at it from a weekly basis, you've got to assess whether it's got enough, higher probability or lower probability of that trade working out. And if we do take that daily entry, which the daily entry could look okay, potentially with a break up through 52, and you've got lower risk on that, this leg's a bit extended. Potentially, it might get extended quick, and then the longer term base, it's going to be fairly capped. And you might only get a bit of a run up towards 60 or this most recent high at 58, say 58. And there's potentially not a lot in that. So that's what's, it's more maybe that the weekly chart I do like is holding higher lows. It's going the right direction. It's just not, it's probably early stages just yet. And we might get that bit of a run up on the daily and then a bit of a good correction. It could just clean out a few people if you get in off the daily. So just bear that in mind. Yeah, take a look at gold. I'll get a look at gold in a minute. Now that was MGX. What was the other one? I've gone through that pack. This is not really one I was just looking through this before. Actually, we'll draw this one up. This is more the weekly. So this is PAC. Oh, get rid of that. Doesn't want to go, does it? Anyway, let me get that drawn up. So I want to draw this on the weekly PAC, Pacific Current Group Limited. So it's the same old price action we're looking for. Let me just go back to a bit longer term. So you see off the monthly, we've got massive base through that $4 range. And it's had it, before that, had a big run up, big sell off. That was your GFC, big GFC sell off. Built your high low in here, started working its way back up till about start of 2015, and it reached $14. Bang, got hammered again. That's ever so slightly higher low than what we got previously. The low's at 315. It got to 348, so still broke below that $4 mark. Go back to that's that most recent low on the longer term scale. It has lifted off here, and it's really just this weekly price action. I don't mind this. You can see that sort of grinding, and it could potentially be just building to lift up again. But we'll get to that on the weekly, just what I'm looking for. So the major term, longer term is sort of that 4 mark, major longer term support zone 460, 360 to 4, which is touched down on, and it's lifting this. You can see that's broken that most recent anchor to the downtrend and started to lift. Got your secondary move here. That was a good little extension up towards 850. But then you've got this two-level, what we talk about a lot, that two-legged move lower. And I don't mind seeing that, especially after we've had a good little run up. And this really didn't correct this leg up. So we've had a little minor pop, a pullback in below that resistance zone around 5. And then it's lifted again off a higher low, which is good. And this is a good sign of strength, but it hasn't played out. What I want to see now is really that it's the final sort of stage of a high low. So whether the market, we've just lifted up, touched just above 7, whether we can come down and start building a high low up, maybe 650 or so, thereabouts. But then I think this could have another major leg up. And then you'd be looking for, if we can just change colors, this is your longer term one move up. This is your corrective phase, lower, and then potentially looking for another longer term move up, which could take you, if it gets a run on it, could take you all the way back up to $14. And that's just your technical basis. I haven't really looked in the fundamentals of PAC, but it's only small too, 38 grand, 40 grand. But if that starts to build up a bit of volume starts to come in, if we do get that little pullback, be looking down to the daily just for that daily entry. But off the weekly chart, that's potentially what we'd be looking for. One, pullback, big corrective action, move higher, that secondary leg higher. And if you're breaking that down, we've got those couple legs up, that macro correction lower, but it's still holding within that anchor, and then looking for that run up. So we'll see. It'd be nice to see if it plays out that way. We keep an eye on that. The daily chart at the moment, you can see it's just hovering up here. I wouldn't want to buy it on that break here. I don't think it's done too much. Say, for example, that break at, was it high 710? Because if we go back to that chart, where am I? That weekly chart, that 710 is probably going to still take you within that. It's still going to hold within that corrective phase. If it was going to break up here, it might spike to 750, and then it might just pull back and wash a few of these late buyers out from the daily chart. It might just spike up, pull back, and that way it's broken out of that contraction, broken to the upside, and then we'd be looking for the higher low. Just your typical, I guess, sequence of events that we look for. So yeah, that's what's that PAC? All right, let's rip into it. So we've got Lauren kicking on. So first we look at those three, and we'll get into spot gold. And anyone else that's got something you want to take a look at, just whack it into the chat function there. Put the code in and we'll get into it. PNC. All right, so that daily, it's coming to that resistance. It's got a selling where you expect a bit of a reaction, and you can see that candle there. If you just look at purely, you're looking at candles. That's rejected up towards that $3.70 mark, and that's come off a base of around, well, a low. We're looking at around, say, 290 to 3. All right, so it's had a good little run up without really, and it was it was all right actually. We'll look at the weekly. Let's just get a picture on the bearings from the weekly. Yeah, all right. So we'll draw up the weekly. It looks like that's more of the one that we want to focus on just for now. Oh, sorry guys. Right, just miscall that. That's all right. Now let's draw that. So what do you got on this one, Lauren? Do you have it, or is it just on the watch list for now? It's probably fairly clear. You can see that sort of run up here. That's basically the average or the longer term average leg up. Get a bit of reversion to the mean. We've had a bit of that. We found a base through that 280 to 290 mark. You can see through here it's pressed up, pulled back, and really that anchor's still in play. That anchor for me is still around that zone 280 to 290. We've had that run up here. You've got that bit of a pullback. We've got another reaction up towards 370. So you're getting capped around 370 to 375. That lower high is played in. But like we say time and time again, it's only really come back down and retested that anchor level to that trend up. So for me, it's more what I would expect by just looking at that weekly chart. Is it more going to be capped up towards 370, and then I would be looking for potentially some heat to come out of that market. And I want to see buyers be stepping in, start to step in at higher levels, just to show that, that extra confirmation, and potentially stepping in around 320 to 330 on a bit of a pullback off the weekly chart, and then dropping it down to your daily to look for a potential entry setup and see if you can be working off. Because at the moment, this could just build from here, could hold here, and you start getting some weakness come in. It's pressing back down. It gets a bit choppy. You might get chopped around if you're looking for this just to continue on up and you're looking for that trend trade. Or you could range trade. I mean, if it comes back down to 290 or even higher, $3, and then it pushes all the way back down and you start to look for your higher low, you could work off a higher low there because you're looking for more of that range trading action, because it still could be capped at 370, unless this is the time when you do work off that higher low, off a push down to $3. It's not looking that great on the daily chart, the weekly chart. The trend is still up in the weekly. It's still holding your anchor level on the weekly. Everything's still in place. You've got a bit of strength showing with a high low from your daily chart, looking for that push up, potentially just to 370. And it could be the one that breaks straight up at 370. But I think it's got a lot of work to do from that weekly chart before I would be interested to drop it down to a daily. And you can look here, we've got a, 1, 2, 3, 4 green candles and rejection of that 290. So the rejection's quite handy. It looks like it's still got a lot of strength in it. But then we've got a bit extended before we can get up on a weekly basis through, even push up and retest those highs. It fell short slightly before we're starting to get a bit extended. How many more people are left on the sidelines to come into that market to continue that push higher? So I think it needs to just clean out a few of these buyers, put them back on the sidelines. But if it can hold up, I think it's going to hold up the anchor, above that anchor, because the next time if it grinds its way down, this trend line or that rising trend line is probably going to be above. It might be match off around $3, 310, 305, somewhere around there. But what we're getting is that price action where the market's pushed up, getting a bit of heat, and then you just want to see buyers start to step in, and that contractive price action, and then it start to lift. And by that way, you've got your high low built on your weekly basis. It's got a good platform to work off on your daily. You've got some time that's worked its way through before it starts to lift. So if we go to just looking at the daily is also hovering around overbought as well. So how many more people are left on the sidelines to come in to give it the push you need to get that for the entry? Anyway, so I would like some heat to come out of that, pretty much come out of this leg up. So this leg up, heat comes out, pull back, build your high low from the weekly, that contractive phase that we said, this price action where it chops around a bit, but it's holding those daily high lows, and then start to lift from there. Even though this didn't work out, you can see it's lifted here, gone sideways, held the higher lows. I would like to see that price action, even though it did pull back. And then that would match off with a weekly high low, and then up we go. That would be the idea anyway. But all we can do is sit and wait. VTG. So knocking. All right. VTG, just if we're just looking at this section only, from here across, pretty much from the start of June. Okay, that looks good. We've had a little pop up here, high, low, pressed up, looking like it's potentially, if it goes up through high $1.25, you know where your risk is at somewhere around $1.15. But in context to the overall picture, it doesn't look that great. If I'm guessing what's happened on the weekly, look, it could work out. I mean, the weekly too. You look at that weekly; it's extended up here. Price action's extended. We're well and truly in that overbought territory, and we're only hitting 125. Last time we're up here, you can see we're way up at about 175 to $2, so 190. So we're falling a long way short of that last major lower high. So you can see the market's pushed up, pulled back, major lower high here at around 375, pressed down and just completely dropped out of the sky, come down to about $1. We started to work our way off the dollar before we've come back down. The one thing that's working in its favor is the fact that it's retested that $1 mark on the weekly time frame. But ideally, we haven't had that acceleration up, and that's what you'd want to see. I'll just draw that up. So the fact that we've got, like I said, that's your support zone. It's pretty clear. But we've got also, and it looks to be fairly strong at the moment, the market still, there might not have been enough selling that's come out of the market, enough heat that's come out of the market. We might, I mean, I don't even know what's happening fundamentally on this, but it might be that this could be building for a move through one. We don't know that. But what we do know is that it's retested that $1 mark, and we've had it lift off that $1 mark. But that lift for me, especially on the weekly basis, hasn't got any conviction. As opposed to, say, just trying to think, you want those sort of, these candles, good acceleration higher, like this, good acceleration higher. So that's with the trend. It's accelerating higher, and then you've got a 3 or 4 candles in a row. That's in the wrong direction. The market's giving up. That's acceleration higher. That acceleration type of higher. We've got that acceleration higher up here. I would have expected that by now. I would have expected up off a double base or off that support zone. It's a handy support zone technically. I would have expected that acceleration higher. If there is a lot of buyers that have been watching it, have had it on their watch list, and they're ready to get in. But instead, it's been a bit of a grind just to get to 125 when the market's gone to sort of that overbought zone. So that for me is not conviction. Conviction on the buyers anyway. It could be potentially conviction on the sell side. It's grinding higher, and then if you go down to that daily, it's had a couple of Okay, can you hear me, guys? Clear? Looks like it's just my headphones disconnected from my computer, which was nice. All right, so you hear me come back on? Be back on. All right, you'll hear me coming through loud and clear now. All right, great. Alan, g'day. So you can see the conviction on the weekly is not, for me, it's not that great. It could be that, it could be completely wrong. This thing grinds higher and we just hover around. Just come back to that chart. We hover around here. We hover around that overbought like this. That'd be great if we see that. And if you can see, that was from somewhere around here, a bit of heat coming out of the market, and then right up until the highs. So we had this rally from there when we hovered around on the weekly basis. Pretty much the good part of most of 2016, sort of just chopped around overbought, continued to head higher. That could happen, that could play out. But this was in a rising market. You can see the trend was up. At the moment, the MAs are still pointing down. We're still in that building phase, or we might just be stuck between a bid level around $1 and a $2 sort of a resistance zone. And we could just be chopping around here. So we might just chop around this support zone at the moment, and then we start to lift, edge up to 175, and then start coming back down again. So for me, is it worth putting too much into that, especially on the daily up here? I don't like the fact that we're overbought on the weekly, and we're sort of just come off that overbought on the daily. So if you did, back to where we're looking at that buy, if you did enter through 125 and you had your stop at 115, just adding, looking at it from a probability perspective, how much probability can you allocate to that trade working out for you? So that's the only way I'm looking at it. Even though the daily the daily doesn't look too bad, if it's got a great fundamental story, which I've completely missed and I haven't looked into it yet, great, then it might be worth it. It's worth throwing some risk at it. And if it has, then you would expect it to get through 125 and kick on. If that's the case, you probably don't have a zone up until about $1.50, which is its most recent lower high. And then on a major scale, you've got up to sort of, 192 bucks. There you go, VTG. So there we go. Does that make sense, everyone? If not, too bad. I'll just turn my headphones off again. All right, next one, MWR. Well, that's gone on quite nicely. So on a daily, I mean, that's kicked on. I wouldn't buy that purely and simply. It's got too far away from the average. You need a bit of a reversion to the mean on that for me. Good supporting volume too on that candle, which was Friday, wasn't it? Good supporting volume. So there's massive volume there for what it's done in the past. And the weekly, again, it's gone on the last few weeks quite heavily. So both the daily and weekly have really gone on with it. There's not much to say about this one. If you're holding it, fantastic. If you're holding it, I don't know where. If you haven't taken a partial, everyone knows I'm partial to partials. I like to lock something, especially the fact that it's looking extended. What news has driven this one up? Trading update. New production. Watches completed and delivered into the company's warehouse. Orders placed for a further 20,000 Space Talk watches for delivery in October. Okay. 7,000, 2,500, so 20,000. So it's obviously quite a bit of a sales performing ahead of expectation. So I said some good news. Obviously, there's some interest in what they call it the watches. Is it? Let me just get up the profile. What do they do exactly? Wireless Limited MGM. If it can come up, it's taken its time as a technology company designing, developing, and commercializing Internet of Things devices for children and software for school communication and student absence management. All right. Interesting company. But yeah, either way, obviously that has been what's driving it up. So on the back of good news like that, it could get a kick on. But for me, yeah, way too extended. I'll be looking at this. A good fundamental base to work from, but it would need to come back in a range that makes sense, a sense to throw some risk at it. From there, I mean, this could happen. I know that this thing could just go boom straight up, retest $6 would be nearly 100% gain if that happens. But in saying that, you'd expect some profit taking sooner or later if you've held it, say the $1.80 mark, even $2 mark. You've pretty much made about 30 to 40% on that, or 50%. Sorry, 50% on that. But it looks nice. Thank you very much, Lauren, for that. All right, we'll get over to gold. Get onto gold. Whatever I'm at my chart. Do you want to look at? We can look at both Aussie gold and where is it? XAU USD. Fancy having it on a. Don't know. I've got two here. So it looks like well, this is basically. Let's get down. Let's just work our way from the weekly down to the daily. Do you want this weekly chart? It's looking at extended, but there's no, and it's just because it's gold. everyone likes gold. You know that there's probably going to be some buying into that. But on the weekly chart, let me just draw that out. Major support. Let's look for some zones. Look, even there, it could have broken down. We don't know. This is all technically based as observations. Now we've got stochastics which are pushing into that oversold mark. The momentum is down at the moment, which is quite obviously on the weekly. It's come off that 1360, 1360, 65 zone, sold down there. Now potentially we're broken, or we could just go sort of range trade. It doesn't mean that you're broken down as this uptrend over the longer term, where it's definitely rolling over and just going to head south. You're just looking for support zones where it could potentially hold up. And the first one down is really down to that sort of 1120 mark. The weekly for me, it's not really saying a massive picture. Let's get down to the daily. Yeah, so the fact is this is that rising support on the weekly chart. It's come down, we head south, we got down to about 1160, we popped back out, sort of testing that zone where we've broken out to. We've had a couple of red candles come in, a couple of selling. Obviously, it's all linked to that the US dollar. The safe haven at the moment is really just jumping into the US dollar. They're not using gold as a safe haven. Every time they jump into the US dollar, it rallies, it's putting pressure on gold. Now, longer term, I would expect, with the US raising rates, whether it's been factored into it, I don't know. It's one of those things you really have to just take it as it comes. I wouldn't be right now having too much exposure to gold purely because of that longer term weekly chart. If I'm going to add some exposure to gold or a gold play, or through stocks or through physical gold, spot gold, futures, whatever you want, I would be probably looking towards this support zone. And that's the daily chart. So potentially this support's at 1125. I mean, I know it's nearly 170 bucks away, 80 bucks away, but it's possible that it can spike down here and then potentially start to lift and react off that zone. It could just fall short. It could just be reacting off this zone, but I just think we're going to be choppy. I wouldn't expect to be a bull run on gold anytime soon. Looking at these daily charts, there's just too much pressure on the downside. Go back to the weekly. I just want to get back. Yeah, so we're sort of, from here we broke, was holding, we broke up out of that weekly downtrend, but then we found that resistance at 1165 and we rolled over. So we could just go sideways from here. We could just chop around. I don't really, it's hard to form an opinion on this because I'm getting conflicting views from the weekly and the daily. But in essence, on the shorter time frame off the dailies, there's definite pressure down. There's potentially pressure at that 1213 mark at the moment. So I just seen somebody on a chat function. Thanks, Kurt, if you're listening, mate. So where were we? On the daily chart, there's still pressure down, if you can see, and that really hasn't abated for me. We're just focusing on what's happening on the shorter time frames. So we go away. So we're still edging our way down. We could a bit of heat. You can see that we had that push down, pop back up. That you sort of touched that. It was the start of that downtrend. That was a lower high, pressing down. Got a bit ahead of ourselves up here, and you can see that by just taking that move, you can see coming down. We're just broken up, so we might be in sort of that corrective phase back up, but then I would expect potentially, it could be working its way back up to this major breakout zone at 1237, off this low at 1160. But really for me, I'm in no man's land. I wouldn't short this, I wouldn't buy it. I want to see, and if we do, I'll have to draw it up. I'll draw it up on this chart. I think it's a lot better. So you can see what we've got here. This is sort of that leg up. We're contracting. We could be heading up here. And then if this is the case and this is going to continue, it hasn't really broken any major. This is just corrective action of this leg down. So we've sort of had this leg down, we've come up, we've had this leg down, and we're sort of contracting back up because this, you can see that leg got a bit overextended. It's a bit overcooked on the downside, contracting back up, and then starting to resume. We potentially could be starting to resume if we start to hold another lower high, resume this downtrend. That way you'd be looking to at least down to sort of that 1160 mark. and potentially that continuation, what we're saying, right down to this zone at about 11.25. But I don't like, if we're looking to the daily, just trading off that daily chart. I don't like to see trade off that grind. I mean, for me, that daily trend's down. To buy it here, looking for a break up to that, through that high of, where's that, 12.14, and buying it through here, just looking for that continuation, that contraction up. I think that's a bit of a risky play. So there we go. Like I said, gold, if you've got gold exposure, just be wary. I mean, this could roll over here. Yeah, it could tip over, go straight back down 11.60, especially if it kicks off a bit more with what we're happening with tariffs. There's a bit more fear. People are jumping into the US dollar as a safe haven. It's going to put further pressure on the downside, and that's where you could get this push down. But I would steer clear. If you're trading pure gold, for me, if it's off the daily chart at least, I'd be just sort of steering clear of that just at the moment. I don't see any sort of clear bias. I think biasing on the downside. The bias is obviously down on the daily. We could be contracting high. It could just clean out a few shorts that are trying to jump in and then roll over, or it could just completely go back up. It's too many things. So it probably doesn't make too much sense there. Let's have a look at where Aussie dollar gold is placed at the moment. Weekly. Look, for me, probably don't know what that spike is there. That's pretty much what we're getting at the start. If that's a trend and it's respecting that trend up, it's in a lot better zone than gold in US dollar terms anyway. And that may be, if you couple that with actual US gold, I'm expecting that US gold contraction high just to sort of continue. And you can see in Aussie dollar terms, it's holding up okay. You've touched down on this sort of rising support zone, touched down around that 1680, just holding in there. I haven't seen anything really to, I'd obviously want to be working off that high low. It's pretty, it's a lot more clear cut on this here. Where are we? You go away, get back to our, take a snapshot of that. It's a lot more clear cut here. Just pop up, pull back, pop up. The only problem is we just draw that a bit clearer. We might have this resistance zone we're up against, sort of through here. But I think it's worth the risk. You've got this rising support, you're going high-low here, sort of high-low through here. Potential. This is a potential zone for a high-low. I would like to see, if we're going to get this pop up here, pull back, build a high-low, and just look down to your lower time frames for an entry for this trend up to continue. And I think that's worth a bit of a run for a break of that 1720. If not, I mean, you're still probably going to get enough fat in that trade on the upside if it works out that way. That's Aussie gold anyway. I don't know if anyone trades that. All right, that's probably that enough on that one. Anything else, guys, you want to take a quick look at? Let's just see where the market is. Oh, we bounced 3 points. Not doing too well. 60 TER, that's good. Let's see if this one can kick on. Just keep an eye on TER. For anyone that's got that, hopefully I made some sense there, Murray. You could probably tell by the confusion I would just be keeping away. When it's sounding like, especially on physical gold, you've got different conflicting stories. It's best just to keep an eye and let it work its way out before you've got more of a solid base to work from. All right, NST, what's happening to that one? Let's take a look then, Alan. Gapped up. They had some good news out today. Placement closes heavily oversubscribed. What's the placement price on that one? Issued. That's not the news I'm gonna. Oh, Also successfully completed its 175 million fully underwritten placement to institutional investors with a high-grade Pogo underground gold mine in Alaska. Guys, who cares? What's the price at? Placement was completed at 670 per share, representing a 3.7% discount. 670 a share, so that's way down here. That's unusual that it's gapped up so strong. General placements, you might get a bit of a gap up, and then it's going to work its way back down to the placement value as people are just starting to lock in. And you can see the volumes picked up there. I'd expect there would be a bit of, like I would expect. I wouldn't go near this one, obviously. It's the way it's gapped up and being the placement price at 670. I would expect some heat to come out of that and start drifting its way down. But yeah, that daily chart's well extended. It's in a pretty much well-established uptrend from 2017. The last getting on 2 years from this zone at $3. It's worked its way up really nicely, and that's been well controlled too. You got anything on this, Helen? You having a look at that? As far as place we could do that. I am. It could be that. Let me just see. Every time I get a placement that's come out, my natural reaction is to be looking to see exactly what placement it was at, and be looking for some downside, because generally the placement is going to be under the current VWAP or the longer term VWAP, generally below where the markets are closed when they announce it, which it did, but today it's actually gapped up strong. So who knows? Maybe there's more news to read. You can see that trend has been well and truly, it's well established. It's got a bit ahead of itself up here. I can spit that out. And I think obviously there's going to be a lot of potential for profit taking to edge down. But we'll see. Yeah. Okay. So it's not retail. Then again, you still got those guys. They like a profit a bit. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. We'll keep an eye on this one. I'll be interested to see how this plays out the next coming days. So it's a gap up on both the weekly and the daily. All right. All right, then, guys. Is there anything else you want to have a quick look at? While we're here. Otherwise, we'll just call it a day there, I think. Nothing else we got. There's nothing that takes my fancy too much. Yeah, no, could do, Helen. On that's NST, by the way, guys. For me, look, for me, we're sort of there. Wouldn't be surprised if that's what we just popped up there and we start urging our way back down again. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. All right, guys. If there's nothing else to look at, I'll probably call it quits there. Thank you very much for joining us. Back in on Thursday, so hope you can join us then, and we'll get something. I'll try to get something a bit different organised rather than just chatting about all these bits and pieces, but something slightly different. The skinny channel. Let's actually have a look. All right, maybe it's here, is it? You've got me intrigued. Oh, I'll see. All right, then, guys. Well, we'll call it a go then. Rubbery fingers. There you go. Rubbery numbers. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a good afternoon and have a good next couple of days. And we'll be back in on Thursday. We'll chat to you then. Cheers, guys. Bye bye. Thanks, Helen. Give me homework. Cheers, guys. I'll see you later.